From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, it's the James Show all over again. Mr. McQuiggan, good morning. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, James. Always a pleasure to be here. And I got to admit, it's good to have you back with me on the show this time, because the last time I was here, I was doing it solo. So
well, and it was nearly 2 months ago, because baby's about to be 2 months, man. So, we shouldn't have waited 2 months to have you back on the show. I feel like I owe you much more than that, but
it took me that long to recover. No, it's all good.
Podcast, the guy who doesn't have a newborn, who wakes up like at 3 a.m. every single day, like screaming for food.
Oh, right?
Yeah. So magnificent. Welcome everybody to the show. We're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Thank you everyone for coming in. If you're looking at today's show, we've got a busy one for you as well. A lot of stuff to talk about, including burnout. We talked about this yesterday. I called up Mr. McQuiggan. I was all like, hey, could you jump on the show short notice? And he's all like, sure. I was like, we want to talk about burnout, because it's critical. KnowBe4, as one of the leading cybersecurity awareness companies in the marketplace, and not one of the leading, I think the leading company in the space, might as well get one of their top brains. Although if Javad or Eric or Roger or Perry heard that, they'd be like, hey, wait a minute. We're also going to talk about Discord. We're talking about Cyber Command actually admitting they're targeting ransomware gangs. Congress lets us down again. And also China. How can I not put China in the news for everything that's going on, folks? So we'll get to all of that on today's show and a lot more. Good morning to Mr. Christoph. Coffee cup cheers to you. Loving the new espresso imagery. Coffee cup cheers. Thank you. Mr. Mualam, good morning to you as well. Justin, good morning. And David B., good morning. Thank you all for being here. We've got a loaded show. Today's show would not be possible without our friends over at KnowBe4, so please make sure to check them out in the show notes and give them a shout out for all your cybersecurity awareness needs and so much more. The tradition, Mr. McQuiggan, that you named, Coffee Cup Cheers, is your term that I have taken. With your consent.
Shared it with you. I've shared it with you.
Yeah, I've taken it with your consent.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
But my beautiful, lovely double espresso, good sir. Is that your Tim Hortons?
I've got my Tim Hortons here. It's in my KnowBe4 Yeti cup, so it
do you
keeps
ever
nice hot all through the morning.
Do you ever drink something other than Tim Hortons?
Conference coffee. When I'm at conferences, that crap coffee we get, that's about it.
Be better than that.
I guess I'll suffer and steep down to the low levels and have Dunkin' Donuts, but nah, I can't give Dunkin' Donuts a hard time. I like their coffee, but usually it's Dunkin' or Tim's or whatever else I can get my hands on. If I'm up in Minnesota, it's Caribou, right?
I love Caribou coffee, by the way. So cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
This is my Illy bold espresso. Not extra bold. It's the bold one. Just normal boldness. Cheers. All right. 2 final shout-outs, or 3 of them. Lee, good morning. Happy Friday. It is almost Friday. Bob, good morning to you as well. Thank you for being here. Mr. Bob Henderson, and our good friend from Poland, Tadius.
Great.
Tadios is here with us. I got his name right once, and ever since then, I've been butchering it just historically, horrible. All right, let's talk about burnout. So I talked about this story yesterday. 1Password did a survey that I thought was mind-boggling, because really, who would have thought about this, right? But they did a survey on burnout, and it turns out that 80% of employees are burnt out to the point that they're no longer paying attention to security hygiene. And the number that's even more terrifying is 84% of cybersecurity professionals are burnt out. if that doesn't set you on fire, if that doesn't wake you up, then I don't know what will. Mr. McQuiggan, 2 years into this pandemic, people are burnt out from working from home. What do we do? How do we switch up the awareness? How do we switch up the hygiene?
Yeah, I mean, 2 years in, coming up to 2 years, holy cow.
Yeah.
You've got people working from home. They're isolated from their work environments. It's time to create that next password. I'm just throwing another exclamation mark at the end of it, or I'm throwing another character or just another number. Or I go from the number 7 to the number 8, and so forth, and then you add into that, you've got your security professionals that are burnt out as well because they're working crazy hours, long hours. And, I'm going to roll this up to the top. I'm going to throw this one back up to the top of the organization where they're not recognizing that they don't have enough resources for their security teams to be able to effectively manage the organization. When you've got an organization of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people, you're dealing with all those different behaviors, and you've got a team of like 2 or 3 people that are handling the cybersecurity. Putting out policies, is one thing. You've got to get those governed. You've got to get those audited. You got to make sure those are being enforced. And, otherwise you're just standing on the rooftops and just shouting and nobody's paying attention. When you've got your users and they're, using weak passwords, or they're trying to circumvent and not have to connect using the VPN, or not wanting to use a password manager, or whatever the policy is, they're doing it because either, it's a habit that they formed, that it's a lot easier to do it the other way. It's more convenient to do it. It's easier for me to remember the password and then just add a number to it. And then it's a lot easier to remember. And, what's missing here is a strong security culture. And essentially, if organizations, and this comes from the top, if the organizations aren't going to adopt a strong security culture, and I'm not just saying that your executives say, hey, we take security seriously, because that's what we see every single time there's a data breach, that letter goes out from those organizations. And the first thing it says is, we take security very seriously. And my response is always, well, apparently not seriously enough, because you've suffered this breach. You've got a culture of people that don't take it seriously and aren't in getting involved and understanding the why that becomes behind it, why we want you to have these strong passwords, why we can't have you repeating them, and not, these are the reasons why the policies are in place, so we can protect the organization. Because everybody with an email address inside an organization has a key to the front door. And I'm going to step off my soapbox now. Thank you.
No, you don't need to step off your soapbox. Some great stuff. I disagree with one of the last pieces you said, but
okay.
And we'll talk about that in just a minute. I think there's a few things. You're right about security culture. You and I did a bunch of tech corners on culture versus awareness versus technology. You guys can go back, check those out on our YouTube channel, or if you're listening on this podcast channel, just go down to the tech corner. James McQuiggan and I did like 3 of those this year. So you guys can definitely go back and check those out. They're really, really to the point of this. Look,
more to come.
A lot more to come. Here's my thing with this burnout, because there's a lot of great comments by a lot of awesome and very, very smart people who tune into the show. But I have one aspect of this that I think is a little bit more pointed towards myself as a practitioner. Why are we not changing the way we do awareness, knowing that people are home? Number one. Number two, why are we not communicating to people that I'm not going to give you work hours anymore? I think that work-life balance that David here talks about in his comments is really, really critical. I'll put his comment so people can see it. And those listening, it's work from home has been taxing on many employees. They've lost the boundaries between work-life balance they have, right? But that work-life balance happens, when you and I are trying to talk and I'm triple booked for a time slot, right? Or people are exhausted. People are tired. They're working these 9 to 5s. But guess what? If your kids are home, if your spouse is at home, you may only get a few hours alone with your wife at 11 a.m. And you don't really want to have a meeting at 11 a.m., but you are. And then that taxing just continues on because you're sitting down in your desk, in your home. There's no set lunch break. When we worked in the office, everyone had a set lunch break, right? You kind of knew that from 11:30 to 12:30 or 12 to 1, people were out for lunch. No one booked a meeting unless it was a working lunch meeting and so forth. But now there's none of that. People are booking meetings during lunch. And in some cases, you can jump on a call and see people eating while you're on it. I've been told that multiple times from peers and so forth. So I think that's really, really important. The other aspect of it is change the way we do awareness, right? It's not just culture, but it's also don't do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's the definition of insanity. Start to look at it a little different. Maybe.
You want your security awareness to be engaging. It's got to be something where it's not just them, watching something. They've got to have some sort of interaction, whether that's assessments during it, whether it's videos, whether it's other things that go on throughout the year, security week or cybersecurity awareness month or whatever you have, fairs,
security bingo. I love security.
Cybersecurity bingo, a scavenger hunt, looking for certain things, do things where they are hands on keyboard or they're actually taking actions.
And there's a reward at the end of it.
Yes.
There's a reward at the end.
A reward.
Here's the thing. If I guarantee you one thing, if you gave everyone a paid day off, that doesn't impact their PTO or vacation, right? And you said, we're going to do this, and the team that wins, they're all going to get to work a 4-day work week next week, right? They get to pick a day off, and that's their day off. No worries. The losing teams will pick up their workload. I guarantee you would have a better security culture. But a lot of great ideas on this one. Thank you so much, and everyone, all your great comments. Thank you so much. They've all been invaluable. Please go to our LinkedIn page and check out some of these comments. This is on the LinkedIn James J. Azar page, not the CyberHub podcast one. Let's move to a few more stories here with the time we have.
We could go all hour with this.
Yeah, we can do an hour show on this. But burnout is real. If you're in security, you should. The link to this article is in the show notes. Send it to your boss if you're not the boss, and send it to other people within the org and ask them. Maybe that should be something you do now. Is send out a survey and see where your burnout rate is internally. All right, let's talk about this one. A dozen malicious NPM packages were caught hijacking Discord servers. Over 17 malware-laced packages have been discovered on the NPM package registry, adding to a recent barrage of malicious software hosted and delivered through the open source software repositories like PyPy and Ruby Gems. Our friends over at JFrog, and they have an unbelievable CISO over there. Moran is incredible. Came out and said the libraries now taken down were designed to grab Discord access tokens and environment variables from users' computers, as well as gain control over a victim's systems. There's a bunch of packages. Again, Discord continues to be a point of attack for threat actors.
Yep. Yeah. Any popular platform that's out there, cyber criminals look at that as a smorgasbord, because if they can figure out ways to inject code or take over, they're gonna work to do that, because the payoff for them is huge because of the number of users that are involved in it, and whether or not they have the understanding with what the code that's getting inserted in there. But then they're looking to gain access of people's accounts and then leverage that to launch additional malware to other people after that.
Yeah, we have a question here from a LinkedIn user. This is NPM. What does NPM mean? That's a node package manager. So it's essentially that endpoint node that delivers info. So keep that in mind. We'll move on to another one. One of my favorite people in the military, General Paul Nakasone, provided a peek yesterday behind the curtains of how the agency itself, U.S. Cyber Command, that he's leading, is trying to combat the growing threat organized ransomware gangs pose to U.S. cybersecurity and vital global infrastructure. The general explained that his agency is working hand in hand with NSA, FBI, and other federal entities. During a talk yesterday at the Reagan National Defense Forum, a meeting of national security officials held on Saturday. After the talk, he noted to the Times that he sees Cyber Command's mission right now as focusing on trying to understand the adversaries and their insights better than we have ever understood them before. While the general was cagey about the details of ongoing and previous counter operations, like earlier reports have shown that Cyber Command has taken a hand in both punitive actions like those targeting Russian ransomware groups like REvil or Revel, as well as restoration efforts like the ones undertaken after the Colonial Pipeline incident as well. James, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and we've already been seeing activity and actions from the U.S. government with regards to some of the ransomware groups like REvil, as it mentions in the article. So, but they're not actually targeting, they're going after their money, basically. They're hitting up the crypto wallets and the crypto exchange to restrict that. And then even this morning, in the Wall Street Journal, there's discussion regarding how the government can regulate, and I know this is going to lead into another story in a minute, but how the U.S. government wants to try and regulate cryptocurrency because so many cyber criminals are leveraging that to get paid for their ransomware attacks. You take away the cryptocurrency capability for cyber criminals to get paid, and that's going to eliminate a lot of issues. It's going to throw them back to 2006 when it comes to trying to do ransomware.
It absolutely is. Yeah, I think there's a lot of work that's not being published there between that Cyber Command does, but nonetheless, it's good to see them take part in this as well. This takes me to our one of our final stories today before we get to China. A cyber incident reporting mandate suffers another setback in this incompetent pursuit for the National Defense Authorization Act. So a lot of people have invested a lot of time and a lot of effort getting a provision in the National Defense Authorization Act that would require and set timeframes for when critical infrastructure owners and operators need to report major incidents, and some companies would have to report making ransomware payments.
Yep.
The bill, they essentially phased out any discussion around it, folks. And what they did is they slow played it so that the bill had to get passed, and they just deleted this provision all together. So now the idea of reporting this types of crimes and making it mandatory, we're not saying reporting it to the media or reporting it to victims, because a lot of these organizations do that, but by reporting it as part of the National Defense Authorization Act, that would have given Cyber Command, that would have given NSA, that would have given the White House and the Department of Justice a lot more oversight and more accurate numbers as to what's going on within the country. And so if you guys remember one thing, the only reason we know about SolarWinds is because FireEye disclosed it voluntarily. We may have never known about SolarWinds if FireEye didn't disclose it. Could have been buried as just something really, really small. FireEye went out and did the heavy lifting here. There is a alternative by the Republicans in the Senate that narrows it down. This is led by Senator Rick Scott out of the great state of Florida. But I doubt this one will make it through. A bunch of blaming going around. These people are blaming those people, but you know what? Yeah. You know what? You're both to blame. Incompetence. Which takes me to our final thing, which is why China is just absolutely having a field day, folks. So state-sponsored threat actors from China are targeting government and private sector organizations across Southeast Asia, especially those closely involved with the Beijing infrastructure development projects, according to a report released by a cybersecurity firm, Infosec. So they've been targeting a bunch of governments, particularly the Thai Prime Minister's Office and Thai Army, the Indonesian and Philippine navies. That's part of their South China Sea domination. Vietnam's National Assembly and Central Office of its Communist Party. The continued communism in Vietnam and not opening it up, not allowing it to become more like Singapore is a huge threat to China. They're very vested in that piece of it. And also the Malaysia Ministry of Defense also did that. This is also part of the work that Recorded Future does, and I've had a Charity Right on the podcast several times as we talk about China and their illicit activities. So while our Congress can't make a simple bill, China continues to spy on its neighbors. and target countries like Singapore and Cambodia, as well as Laos and Myanmar, as part of its espionage tactics in cyberspace, as well as how they're now going after Taiwan. So, folks.
So we had some interesting comments kind of kicking back, not to dredge up the last story, but I thought it was interesting, the downside of reporting. And it brings up a good point, because I came out of the electricity industry working for that little German company called Siemens. And in the electricity industry, you have the NERC-CIT requirements, the US standards for electricity generation, transmission, distribution. And they have an incident response program, and you have to report within 24 hours. 24 hours of having an incident, you have to report to the Energy ISAC group. So the stigma or the concern of an organization that's publicly traded by reporting to a government entity to let them know, hey, this is what's happening. If that information leaks out, we have to know that data that is going to be protected as much as our own NSA secrets. And we've already seen, the NSA got breached. So organizations can be leery about wanting to report about events and issues with regards to them. And that's just kind of giving that flip side to the perspective you were giving us there earlier, James, with regards to reporting, whether it's 48, 72, whatever. Look, but we want to be able to learn from it, and we want to be able to have some sort of oversight and to help those organizations overall. Because you're right. If FireEye never reported, it may have been a longer time before we'd actually found out about SolarWinds. But organizations can report, and I think as long as we can secure the information that they're going to be reporting in, and it's going to be used properly and not against an organization and not leaked to the media, then we can start making steps forward to having that happen.
So I want to point out two things to what you said. I have been a long time supporter of report and give them immunity to report it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Unless there's gross negligence, and define what gross negligence is.
Right.
I've spoken to several congressional aides, to some prominent congressmen and women who are on this topic, as well as senators and their aides on this topic. And I've even given them a definition of what would be considered gross negligence.
Okay.
Right? So that you can put it in there. I've had 3 lawyers review it, so it's vague enough to where you can still sue them for it, and you can let the court decide what the Congress and Senate means by passing something so damn vague. Right. But nonetheless, you could have put something in there, right? I think the big thing is this: one, show me one company who's been through a breach, whose stock went down and never came back up. If I hold my breath, I will die, because you'll never find one. Does not exist, right? Number one. Number two, the greatest victim of reporting are the people who want to report. CISOs, right? Michael Johnson, friend of the show, former CISO at Capital One, did everything right, was still promoted to cybersecurity advisor, right? And eventually replaced, and now he's somewhere else, and he's in a better seat, right? But we're the people who are highly impacted by reporting it, and we want to report it. We want to report it because we realize that the fact that we're not reporting it, we're losing big picture, right? So the Department of Justice, Cyber Command, FBI, NSA, CIA, CISA, you name it, TSA, because TSA does security as well, folks. TSA does cybersecurity for pipelines and railroads and airports, apparently, all right? The same people who search you and search your bag and say, take your laptops out and take off your shoes and no belts, right?
Those guys security agency.
In charge of cybersecurity somehow. But if we all reported it, they would have better visibility, right? Would be able to pick up on trends.
Sure.
And would be able to recognize specific tactics of attack. We don't right now. And that's the whole point. Give these companies immunities. Right, give them immunity, period. End the discussion. It's really not that hard. Folks, we're way over time, way over time. And you guys
in Tech Corner, James.
Because literally our views keep going up. More people are tuning in. And I'm forever grateful for all of you. And all the great comments. And I'm sorry we didn't get a chance, but I love how You guys, I think I have the best cybersecurity community of any podcast. I really do. I think so. You guys are awesome. Every single one of you is just really, really smart and talented, and you guys are all about helping one another. And I think that's what makes this the best community on planet and keeps me doing this every single day. So I really do appreciate it. Mr. McQuiggan, man, your friendship, the fact that you filled in for me is heartwarming, man. I really do appreciate it. Forever grateful for it. I'm forever grateful for everyone here as well. Thank you so much.
Pleasure's mine.
We'll be back Monday. Check out my Tech Corner with Roger Grimes tomorrow. You guys don't want to miss it. We had a great conversation. And we'll end with Larry Rosen, who's my favorite comedian of all times. Twice the James, twice the time. Indeed, folks. That's it for us here. Until next time, have a great weekend. Be safe. Most importantly, stay cyber safe.
See ya.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.